Been a couple of days. Got the oil pressure gauge all wired up here. Well, what I think is wired up. It's all using the same wiring that old gauge had, and I know that old gauge did light up when I first turned it on, so I know that it should work. Yesterday, what I did was I didn't really do any more work on that. I just did some cleaning. As you can see, the engine bay is pretty clean now. I cleaned it up quite a bit, painted this radiator and stuff just now. I actually just did that before. I also painted, so that's the airbox lid, the battery tray on the other side, and the crossover pipe, and then the actual airbox is sitting on a tire over there. So I just did some painting and stuff like that because I'm waiting for this battery to charge. I found this battery and it's still charging. Hopefully it'll have enough just to crank over. But now I'm basically ready at the point to see what the oil pressure is. I gotta have it cranking and that, but yeah, basically just gotta wait for the battery to charge. I've been waiting for the battery to charge. It's all charged up now. I'm actually gonna chuck it in and see what happens. See if we've got oil pressure coming to the gauge, see what everything is. Wow, well, it runs. Okay, so it'll crank over and it will actually start pretty easily actually. And I found that that glow rail does actually heat up. The light in the cab doesn't show up, but I accidentally touched that rail and it was boiling hot. So it glows, and you can see no 2H would be able to start like that if it didn't glow. So that works. The glow system, it works. Currently, I'm just trying the EDIC system is what we currently are looking at. So for those of you who don't know, the way that these turn on and shut off is through what this is. It is an EDIC motor. It says there on there, it says EDIC motor. What this does is it bolts up, and this thing here turns from left to right, and it has a rod on it. It has this rod on it right here, and that rod joins the injector pump, and when you're cranking it in ignition, it pulls that little pin, it pulls it closer to the firewall, and that's over injection, so it overfuels it so it can start up, and then it goes back to the run position when it's back on ignition, and then when you turn off, it pushes forwards, and that cuts the fuel. So right now, when I want to stop it, I have to pull it, which a lot of people do because these things just break all the time, but I want to get it actually properly working. So the one that I have bolted up right here, when I plug it in, there's a clicking noise. It just goes click, click, with the fuel cutoff relay, which I'll get to in a second. The second one and the third one both have just a constant buzzing noise. Down here on a 60 series, the fuel, it's down underneath the footwell, down under there. That is what is buzzing. So I don't know if that's bad, but the thing is, to get a new one of those, it costs about $600. But luckily, outside, I have another HJ, well, I don't have another 60 series, but I have a HJ47, which I got the EDIC motor out of, and it has the same system. So I'm just going to take that out, and I'm going to see if by putting it in, that makes it work. It won't start back up easily. The batteries that I have are really bad. They don't charge well, and they can't really crank. So I can charge them up and get about one start out of them, but and the oil pressure reads like above 140. But I have an oil pressure relief valve. You can get a larger relief valve, so it brings that oil pressure down. And when it was on, it was only, the battery sat at about 12.4 volts. So I don't know if that's the alternator or the battery. I usually obviously would assume it's the alternator, but I know these batteries are bad for a fact. Okay, I have some good news and some bad news. Just plugged the new EDIC motor, the new relay in down there, and I went to plug the thing in and the rod moved. Beautiful, into the opposition. The bad thing is I didn't realize where the rod was, and it is now lodged here in this little bit, and I can't move it out because the motor is pushing it up against this. I'm going to try and put it on ignition, see if it'll move the rod back. Otherwise I do have another rod, or just try and hit it. But how good, it worked. The rod moved with that EDIC motor. So now that works, and hopefully I'll be able to turn the car off. Let me just fix this little rod issue. Well, you saw it there. I'll put a little clip of the video from my phone. That's it moving. That's the EDIC motor works. I think it's not moving great right now, but it starts and then it turns off with that new relay. So the other one must have just been bad. So that is now both of the issues pretty much solved. The glow plugs work, but they're not really, that light isn't coming on. So yeah, and I'm gonna replace the glow plugs anyway, now that I know what they are, and it runs really nice. I had to adjust the idle a little bit, so I've just got to put the airbox back in and bolt everything back up again. But right now, I think it's ready to go, basically. So I'll chuck everything back in, and then I'll look at doing the brakes. What you would usually be seeing in this middle bay here is a giant white hunk of metal called a 60 series Land Cruiser. But it is not here in the middle bay anymore, which only means one thing, that it runs and drives, which it does. It is over here in the final bay on the hoist. So this is what I was doing all of yesterday. I didn't film it because I was running into a lot of issues and it was quite annoying. But basically, if you open that up there, you will find this. This is a preheat timer for the glow plugs. It tells the glow plugs what to do. Quite an extensive little thing here. But as you can see in the bottom here, it is quite messed up. And that was actually the reason why the glow plugs were not working. So I went out and I ordered this thing. As you can see, it looks very, very good. It is from a 75 series. So it's still the exact same system basically. And anyway, so now if I go over and I turn the ignition on, the glow plug light actually comes on, and hence the glow plugs actually work and heat the engine. So after I got that fixed, it wasn't actually super necessary because our next issue was the EDIC motor, which in the last clip you saw me fixing the EDIC motor, but it ended up actually not working the very next day. I plugged it in and it was all working, but the next day I went and I turned the engine on and it immediately died. So what was happening is it would turn on, it would go into overfueling, which was great, but as soon as the car was started and it was back on like ignition, it would just cut the fuel, so it wouldn't actually go in the middle. Two issues this might be is the oil pressure cutoff, which I don't think any of that works. I don't think any of that wiring works because the oil pressure gauge on the actual thing doesn't work at all. So I think that might be an issue. Or the control module. I'm going to try the oil cutoff switch and redo all the wiring. But if not, then I will send the control module, the original one that didn't work, I'll send that off to Mr. Land Cruiser and see if they can fix it, because I've heard that they can redo them because they're about $700 to buy them reconditioned. But then all it was I bled all the brakes and the clutch, and then I drove it out here, and it was absolutely horrific to drive. It was probably the worst thing I've ever driven in my entire life. So the brakes basically didn't work. Like you could pump them up and then they would work after they built pressure, but no, they work if you went right to the bottom and then you get the brakes right at the bottom. You'd have to really press on, which wasn't bad because all I was doing was moving out, across and into the bay. The steering was absolutely perfect. It felt better than my 80 series. The clutch, you come all the way out, and right at the last little bit, it would just catch and you just, clutch master cylinder and the brake master cylinder they're very old, but that's the current story where I've got it. Give me 1 second. So there are lots of cool things under here that you can see. It's obviously very cobwebs, a lot of grease, a lot of mud and stuff like that. A little bit of rust, get that on the leaf. A long-range fuel tank. It looks like a very, very, very large long-range fuel tank. I'm going to be replacing this speedo cable here. I bought a new one just because I know that they wobble. They wobble in my 80 series even. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time underneath, cleaning that out and painting it. That'll be the next video, because spending a lot of time on engine work gets very angering and annoying. So I'm just going to do something else whilst I wait for parts and stuff like that, and then get down and it'll basically be done. I'm waiting to go out and get like the dash and the windscreen and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the current situation. Anyway, I will see you on the next one, which we will be back in this exact same position underneath the car, giving it a good inspection clean. That'll be fun. Anyway, I'll see you then.